Hi everybody, welcome to another Spectrum Economics video. Today I'm going to be continuing my scarcity series. So this is part 3 of the series so far. So in part 1 we briefly had a look at what I meant by scarcity and how it's defined, and I used a simple example of 4 fellas on an island. One guy has a banana and you got 3 guys competing to get that, so they're offering various things to obtain that banana. And because they're competing, only one person ends up with a banana and you got the other 2 lose out. So, part 2 looked at scarcity from a slightly different angle in terms of how scarcity may exist in the natural world, in terms of there simply just isn't enough to go around, or how scarcity exists because it's been imposed. You can have a government that is acting in a particular way that's resulting in wastage or holding of resources that people have to compete for the limited resources. And I've also got large companies that are hoarding large resources so people can't get hold of them. In today's video, I'm going to be looking at 4 factors of production. So typically, if you've got scarcity, it's a good chance it's linked to one of these 4 factors of production. So people that aren't familiar, the 4 economic factors of production are land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. So part 3, I'm going to be mostly focused, I mean entirely focused on land, and I'm going to be paying quite a bit of attention in terms of land wastage in regards to the meat and the dairy industry. That's something as being a vegan. You can see my t-shirt here. You can see what it says there. Friends not food. I'm a vegan. Some of you have seen my some of my other vegan videos. I do doing something on vegan economics. Look at it in terms of the cost of the meat and dairy industry. So this is looking at it again from a scarcity point of view. So it's only one angle of veganism in regards to economics, but I think it's a very important one. So I'm going to be mostly focused around that, and we'll just progress and just show you what I mean. So first of all, let's define what do we mean by land. Some of you are probably thinking land, this is just what we're on here, good old solid land, right? Now, it's a bit more than just that. It's not just the soil we're standing on. This house is on land, and it's a little bit more than that. It also consists of the water. That's considered as part of land. It's the air as well could be considered part of land in terms of economics. It's the minerals in the ground. Even our forests can be considered as part of land. There's basically natural resources, if you want to put it that way. Probably a better way of describing it. But in terms of our 4 factors of production in economics, we refer to it as land anyway. So this is actually very, very broad. And I want to talk about the meat and dairy industry. It affects most of those aspects of land. So let's take a look at in terms of our livestock. Livestock feed occupies 1/3 of the Earth's ice-free land surface. I got that out of Cowspiracy. They've got a website that's got all these facts relating to it. It's very, very interesting. There's also the DVD and the movie, and it goes into a lot of detail. So just for a bit of background in terms of where this information is sourced, and just grab it from any old website. I've done quite a bit of research on that, and I've checked their facts and all that. So it is quite interesting, and if you watch the video itself, they go extensively into how they got this information too. So you can be pretty sure that 1/3 is actually correct. That is an awful lot of land. But do we actually need that much land for our food? Not necessarily. As you can see here, an omnivore, a person, let's say, who eats meat and vegetables, a combination of meat and vegetables, uses 18 times more land than a vegan. Even a vegetarian, so we define vegetarian as someone who eats vegetables but also has dairy. So still with dairy, you still have cows, milk-producing cows, and they take up quite a bit of land as well. They also require food. That food takes up quite a bit of land. So that's even a vegetarian diet, 3 times more land than a vegan diet. But if you're an omnivore, like I say, you use 18 times as much land. 18 times, that is a lot of land. So you can understand how we could get to the problem of a scarcity of land. Simply because we have so many, so much land taken up by the cattle, so much land taken up by even the chickens and the pigs and all of that, and also the amount of land taken up to grow food. And this results in deforestation, and the effects of deforestation are quite devastating as well, and desertification as well, as in terms of the size of the deserts are growing bigger and bigger because of all these trees getting cut down. And it's not just that as well, it's what they do to the water.
You have, for example, a farm with 2,500 dairy cows. That produces the same amount of waste as a city of 411,000 people. That's just 2,500 cows. That's not many compared to all the dairy cows out there in the world, and that is a lot of pollution. It's the same as a city of almost 500,000 people. And that's from the Environmental Protection Agency. Again, that was back in 2004, so it's not even a new source. It's actually fairly old. So I don't think dairy cows are, producing any less waste. And I'm talking about, the poops that come out and to get washed into the water. So that's a lot of water pollution. I know they don't buy shopping bags and throw them away, but it is still as damaging. How about the air as well? It's responsible for 18% of greenhouse gas emissions. That's more than exhaust from all forms of transportation. That's right. Cows produce more greenhouse emissions than all forms of transportation. We hear about transportation all the time, about CO2 emissions and all of that, but cows with their methane, they're doing more damage to the environment than what human beings are in regards to transport. And it's simply because we're eating meat, we're eating dairy. How about water? How much does a cow drink? 1 pound of meat requires 2,400 gallons, compared to 1 pound of wheat requires only 25 gallons. There's a massive, massive difference in requirements of water for a cow. So you can see here, all of these here are relating to land, all of this wastage, simply because we're eating meat and we're consuming dairy. How about food? A cow consumes between 45 kilograms to 70 kilograms a day. That is a lot of food. That is so much more than what we eat. That is such a large amount of food. And again, in order to grow all that food, we need land. So all this land is being used up. And this is from the beef site. This is a reasonably new statistic, back in 2012. So let's just do a straight out comparison between an omnivore diet and a vegan diet. As you can see here, the vegan diet is significantly lower in terms of water pollution, in terms of oil requirements, in terms of land requirements, and even CO2 is around half the amount of an omnivore diet. I don't generally talk too much about CO2. I know it's talked about a lot, I think, in Cowspiracy, but there are other forms of pollution that we probably need to focus on just as much, if not more, than CO2. Given that we're talking about greenhouse gases, it's actually water vapor is a much larger contributor than CO2. But anyway, I sidetrack a bit there. So why do we have this situation where we have less than 5% of the world on a vegan diet? Actually, I think it's probably less than 3% of the world. It's very low, but it's growing now. That's something. It's on the up. Some countries are getting close to 5% now. Here I am in Australia as well. I think it's almost doubled over the last couple of years. So anyway, so why is the big reason people aren't switching to the vegan diet? One of them, to do with money. Meat is fairly cheap, and so is dairy. And it's because they get a lot of subsidies, as the meat industry is very, very powerful. Let's just take a look at the United States, for example. We got Tyson with 25% of the market, Cargill with 21%, JBS 18.5%, and National Beef 10.5%. So that is huge. That's well over 50%. That's around 70%, I think it is. We add it all up, isn't it? I have to do the maths on that. But that is a very, very large market share by just a few companies. And these companies are very, very powerful. And they've got a lot of lobbying power. And because of that, they're able to keep their prices down because of subsidies. They're also able to keep their prices down as well because they reduce costs through methods such as cramming in the animals in as small a space as possible, pumping them with hormones, giving them cheap feed, is so they can get big and fast at the lowest cost possible. And that enables them to keep it reasonably cheap. But it's the subsidies that are key as well. And this is direct subsidies to the industry, as well as all these externalities and pollution, all that, they do not pay for at all. That comes out of our tax dollars. And you can look at Meatonomics, have quite a lot of information on that. And just the cost to people alone of a Big Mac, I think they look at it, is about 3 times what would be charged, simply because the companies don't have to pay this cost. We pay this cost indirectly. We don't pay it when we're at the counter, but we pay it in other ways, through our taxation, through subsidies, through the costs of cleaning up some of this pollution, through the additional costs of reduced trees and all that. And again, this is an example of scarcity being created because of large industry.
Well, people can change. I believe people can change, but it's going to be difficult as long as the prices are high. But we get the education out there, whether you're trying to convince people on the environmental side of it, or whether you're going to convince people in terms of the cruelty side of it. And as you can see, veganism is on the rise. And eventually, if we all become vegan, then scarcity of land, especially in terms of growing food, is not going to be a problem whatsoever. So how about dairy? We talked about now meat in terms of the big meat companies. But look here in Australia. The number of cows hasn't really changed much since the 80s. But look at the number of dairy farms. That has dropped dramatically. So we're looking at well over 20,000 down to about 5,000. So it's the same amount of milk produced roughly, the same number of cows, but the number of firms have dropped. So in other words, we've got fewer firms producing the same amount. So these firms are obviously bigger. So bigger firm, less but bigger firms out there. So again, that's more power to the industry. And it's what I was talking about in part 2. You have a few people that own the resources, that own the land. They have more power and it creates scarcity. Okay, I'm going to move off of animals just for now, just towards the end of this one. Just briefly talk about cotton versus hemp. Hemp, it's very rarely produced, but there's so many advantages of actually growing hemp instead of cotton. In terms of the amount of land required, there's twice as much land is required for cotton as it is for hemp. The amount of water required as well, a fraction of the amount of water is required for hemp. Hemp is also more durable as well than cotton. And from what I heard, it's actually fairly comfortable as well. It's not like it's uncomfortable to wear. So hemp is a great alternative fabric for clothing. I'm using cotton here. I haven't actually got hold of any hemp, but that's probably something I should actually look at myself in terms of making a change. But this is just some of the examples. I've mostly focused on meat and dairy industry in terms of the amount of land that they've wasted. A lot of my stuff has come from documentaries and websites such as Cowspiracy and Meatonomics, so you can actually check those up. I'll have the links to them in the description so you can just verify some of the stuff I'm saying. But as you can see, in regards to land, we should have plenty of land. As you can see, we're not starving. Most people aren't starving. There's massive amount of food that are getting wasted every single day, and we're using all this land. There are other people that are starving in the world. They shouldn't be starving either. It's simply because the food is not getting to where it should do. We actually have enough food in circulation to feed those people, even though we're using 18 times as much land as we should. Imagine if food was being distributed correctly. Imagine if we weren't wasting food. And also imagine if we all became vegan. You'd have enough land to support probably over 20 billion people without a problem. Anyway, this takes me to the end of part 3 and my focus on land and the meat and dairy industry. If you like this video, remember to click the like button. If you want to see more videos like this, the remaining parts 4 and part 5, click subscribe. I think you'll be notified when they become available. If you're interested in other stuff as well, you can check out my YouTube page. You also check out my Steemit page. I've got a lot of interesting articles there relating to things such as cost-benefit analysis, game theory, macroeconomic theories like unemployment, inflation. I've got stuff on vegan economics, as I mentioned earlier. I'm actually writing a book on that, so I've got some drafts of sort of the early stages of what that book is going to look like. So you can look at Steemit, you can read it, you can go to YouTube and you can watch it. So I've got a number of different ways you can actually, view my material. So if all that interests you, remember to click the subscribe button, or you can go over to Steemit. I've got a link here as well. You can then also follow me. But I think if you're not on Steemit, you'll have to sign up for a Steemit account. I think it takes a few days, but it's certainly worth it. There's a lot of advantages of actually having a Steemit account. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in part 4.